Oh, do you know, Lynn, I'm really bored.
I was going to say
I'm so
you changed
bored.
the music. You
I
found the
put
most
some
boring
boring music on.
music that you could possibly. That was brilliant. I'm
I didn't
glad
do
that
it.
you
I
find it
didn't
boring.
didn't do it on purpose. I was just
Oh,
bored,
please
so I
don't
just
put that
clicked
music
anything.
on. It was horrible. That's the sort of music that makes me crazy. It's like call center music when they put you in a waiting loop. We're
It's
not
like, yeah,
having that again, Craig. No music
okay,
like that.
point taken. If hello, and if this is your first time watching, this is not the way we usually start our live streams. But we're here to help you with your English, hopefully to improve your vocabulary, definitely improve your listening. And we hope that even though we're talking about boredom today, we hope you won't get bored. My name's Craig, and I'm from the website mansioningles.com. We have lots of material there that will help you improve your English for free, especially if you're a Spanish speaker. And we have a podcast at inglespodcast.com or wherever you listen to your podcast that will also help you to improve your listening and your grammar and vocabulary. And if you're interested in improving your speaking, go to englishcraig.com where you will find details of my conversation course. And we're starting this week. The May courses start this week. So if you do want to start speaking more effectively, go and have a look at the website, book a free consultation, and I'll tell you all about it. And with me today is my good friend Lynn from putitlikethis.com. Hi, Lynn.
Hello, hi. So yes, we don't normally start the classes directly like that, do we? But that music was
Boring.
good. It was so boring. Right. So my name is Lynn and I'm an online teacher and my website is putitlikethis.com. And I specialize usually in one-to-one courses. And what I try to do is find out what your specific objectives are. And I say that I try to help you find your own voice in English. So if you're interested, I do all types of courses around that basic principle. So if you're interested, have a look on the website and you'll find out more details. And there's also a place on the website where you can contact me if you want to start courses or you want more information. Okay?
Okay, fantastic. And we are being joined by people watching. Hello, if you are
Great.
watching live, please say hello. Two friends I can see in the chat already. Marlene, how are you doing? Good to see you here. And Tiomsi. So it's lovely to see people watching live. And if you are watching and you haven't said hi, please let us know where you're from. Say hello. And if you're watching the replay, thank you for spending your time with us. We hope this will be useful. So today's topic, and not boring, but that's the topic. Are you boring? Are you bored? What's the difference?
Well, this is the classic mistake that many people make with English between the adjectives that end in ing and the adjectives that end in ed. So if you are normally with the ing, I like to say to my students, it's like this. Ing, you know it from present continuous, don't you? Like I am dancing, I am talking, I am singing. So it's action. So if you see that on an adjective, this is to do with action. So it's a very active thing. It's the feeling. So if I say, are you boring? It means, do you do that action? Are you a boring person? Does everybody around you receive that action of boringness, of boredom? Yeah. And the ed ending is much more passive. So if you are bored, it describes how you are feeling. It doesn't describe the way that you're acting. So are you boring, Craig?
I've been told that I'm boring.
I don't think you're boring. To me, you're not a boring person. I think you are a very interesting person.
Well, thank you. It's very nice of you to say that.
It is true that there are always, when you're a teacher, there are always students who might find you boring. That's true. That's an occupational hazard, isn't it?
True. Tiomsi said there's no time to get bored. Life's too short. Yeah.
Nice and short. That's right. So, do you get bored though sometimes,
Not,
Craig?
I don't get bored very often. I usually find, to be honest, I'm usually too busy to be bored. I work quite a lot, so I don't have, I get bored in certain situations, but I think we're going to talk about that a bit later. There are
Yeah.
particular times in life where maybe you're stuck in a place and you can't entertain yourself. That's when I get bored. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But just to emphasize and add to what Lynn just said, with all those adjectives, if you're interested in something, then the thing is interesting. If you're bored, then the thing is boring. It's boring you. Passive and active. Try to remember that. But we've got some synonyms for you of boring. Let's have a look at these. You can be bored to
I think
death.
sorry, I have to say before this, when we were writing this, I
You
had
were
to
bored, weren't
say,
you?
no, not at all. I was really interested, and I think it's fascinating that when we have all these words to express how bored we are, because we try to make it more interesting. Do you see? Don't you think that that's a paradox? That's a paradox. We have all of these synonyms to express the same feeling about being bored. But
That's true.
Continue, Craig. Continue.
That's true. No, I just want to say thank you to Marlene, who says that we're both interesting people. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you, Marlene.
And hello, Lilia from Argentina. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Lilia.
But yeah, we've got these lovely synonyms to speak about boring and being bored. Bored to death. Obviously, you're not literally bored. I don't think that's possible to be bored to death.
That's dying. Like die of boredom, isn't it?
Yeah. But we do use that as expressing boredom. Oh, I'm dying here. It's so boring. For example, you can also be bored to tears,
very bored,
which is not literally crying. You're not literally crying, but you're bored to tears means very, very bored. And bored to bits also means very, very bored.
Bored to bits is hard to say, isn't it? Lots of B's in that.
Bored to bits.
It's nice though. I'm bored to bits. I usually say I'm bored to death. What do you say?
Bored. I'd say fed up. I think the next one. I'd say I'm really fed up. I'd use that. That's quite common, isn't it? I'm really fed up.
Fed up's a little bit wider though, because you can be fed up because you're bored, but you can also be fed up if you're frustrated at other people's behavior or with something. So fed up's it's quite a wide expression, isn't it? It covers boredom and also frustration a little bit.
Student might say, I'm really fed up with these phrasal verbs, for example.
It means like sick of, doesn't it? Or tired of when you're fed up.
Sick of my life.
Oh yeah, there we got that at the end. I'm sick of my life. Yeah.
World weary. Yeah, you put that on the list, Lynn, but I wouldn't. That's a strange one.
It is. It's something that I found actually when I was looking for synonyms of being bored. But sometimes if you're world weary, I have heard my mother say that to me before. She said, I'm world weary. I think it's something that older people tend to say, actually, because it kind of expresses that they're a bit bored of life generally.
And you can use weary on on its own. You could say, oh, I'm feeling weary. I'm weary.
Weary means tired. Weary means tired. So you're tired of the world. Cheesed off. That's
I like
quite
that,
the
cheesed
colloquial one. I'm cheesed off. I have no idea where that comes from. I don't know how you could imagine a cheese. But cheesed off really means that you are sick of everything.
Fed up.
Fed up. Sick of my life, cheesed off. Oh, we've got cheesed off twice.
We're very cheesed off. We've got it twice.
We're very cheesed off. Indifferent. And uninterested. Indifferent is a little bit different there, though. Did you add indifferent?
Yeah, I added those because they turned up as synonyms as well for bored. You don't
Because
think
I
so?
think there's no, because I think there's a big difference between indifferent and uninterested. I think uninterested could be bored. That's a synonym. But indifferent really means that you have no
No
feelings one
opinion.
way or the other. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So if you're indifferent, you haven't really got a strong emotion. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
maybe not indifferent, but uninterested. Yes, that's a synonym of boredom, of being bored. Uh-huh.
We've got some more as well. Dull. Dull has
Well,
several meanings.
uh-huh. These are kind of more expressions for, because the expressions before describe you. You say, I am cheesed off. I'm sick of my life. I'm bored to death. I'm bored to tears. You
I'm
say it
fed up.
after I'm. Uh-huh. But the next set of things, these are adjectives you can describe the thing that is making you bored.
Right.
So you say the thing is dull. Dull is the opposite of colourful. Uh-huh. So obviously dull is boring. Monotonous. Uh-huh. Tedious. Hmm. I like tedious. Uh-huh. It puts me to sleep. And then I like this one. You added this one, didn't you, Craig? It's like watching paint dry. That is
Can you
such a
imagine
lovely
just sitting
expression.
there watching? You've painted the wall, now you're waiting and you're watching it. Well, how boring is that? Very, very, very
Yeah.
tedious.
I don't use that one, but I have heard it. I love it when I say it's like watching paint dry. Or it's like listening to grass grow, because obviously we can't hear the grass grow. Well, I can't. My hearing's not that accurate. Yeah, listening to grass grow. Yeah. So I think those last ones, like watching paint dry and listening to grass grow, they're very common when you're listening to a very boring teacher, like a
Yep.
lecture, isn't it? And you're so cheesed off because the lecturer just goes on and on and on. And you say it's like watching paint dry or listening to grass growing.
And with monotonous, the clues in the word there really, monotone is the same tone, the same level, the same pitch in your voice, doesn't change. Imagine at university if you've got those really boring lecturers and their voice just drones on and on and on in the same. Well, of course, when you speak English, you want to be animated, even if your language is more monotonal, monotonous, monotonal. You want to try and put different pace in your voice, different volume, sometimes put in a pause for effect, make your voice pitch higher like this or lower like that. So you can really play with your voice so that it's not tedious and monotonous.
And you have to understand that, because what you're touching on there, Craig, is to do with the intonation patterns of English.
Exactly.
And the English language, I always use my little
Oh, I've seen your elastic band before.
band. You see I'm sure I've done it on another one. But remember that, for example, the difference between the intonation patterns of the Spanish language, which is where we both teach, and the English language is Spanish language also has inflection. So when you get excited, like madre mia or something like that, you
Madre mia.
Yeah, I'm not very good at speaking Spanish, so maybe that was not very good. But of course, there are differences in the tone in Spanish. In most languages, there are differences in tone. But in Spanish and French, there are differences. But Spanish is spoken in maybe this range. But the English language has a broader range of tonality. And the problem with this is that when you speak English within the Spanish intonation range, you can sound boring.
Boring. Monotonous.
When you speak like an English person, now most Spanish people, when they try to imitate the English, they say to me, but Lynn, I sound totally like I sound like an actor, or I sound like I'm hysterical or exaggerated. And I say to them, good, because now you sound English. English people do not interpret that as hysterical or exaggerated. They interpret it as interesting. But if you use the lower pitch range, which in Spanish is acceptable and interpreted as interesting, that same range in English is interpreted as boring.
Yeah.
So that's like a little side effect there. So when I think I mentioned before, I try to help people find their own voices. But if you're an interesting person normally, and people like listening to you, if you want to do that in English and you're Spanish, you are going to have to change your intonation pattern so that you give the same impression in English that you do in your own language. Okay.
Exactly.
So they're the things when I say I try to help you find your own voice in English, because you don't have to speak like me or like Craig, because of course we're all individually different. But when you speak in the foreign language, you do want to be you in the foreign language. And sometimes that means vocabulary, it means grammar, but it also means intonation patterns. That was a little diversion. Sorry.
No, I think I'm pleased you did that, because it's an area that I'm really, really interested in. And when I started podcasting, I learned from one of the great podcasters, in my opinion, called Dave Jackson. And he said to me, you need to be more animated when you're podcasting, because even as an English speaker, if you're recording on a microphone, like we are now in front of you, you need to be a little bit more animated than you normally are. But that doesn't mean you're going to be speaking like the person on the radio introducing the music and, hey, good morning and welcome to the radio show. No, you want to bring it down from there a bit and find something in the middle, a bit more animated, with more intonation, with Lynne's elastic band going up more, but not too much.
No,
not too much.
No. And I think also the problem is that probably with a podcast, when you're recording a podcast, you're not really in a real conversation with people, because you're following a kind of script.
Especially if it's a solo podcast. Yeah, you're on your own.
Solo panel. Yeah. And often when we are solo, we're not listening because we don't speak aloud. It's all in our mind, isn't it? What we're thinking. And sometimes when you're solo and nobody is around you, you will find naturally that your intonation range will drop.
Yeah.
Because you're just speaking to yourself. That's normal. That's a human instinct, Nobody speaks to themselves like that. But
really?
You do speak to human beings like that, because you're trying to engage them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If I didn't have the camera on now, Craig, if I were not looking at you, I would not be speaking with this intonation range. If I was blind, if I didn't have the camera,
flatter.
It would be much flatter. But it's because I'm trying to, engage you.
Yeah.
So look me in the eye, Craig. Look me in the eye.
I am, but because I'm looking at the screen, I'm not looking at you. I need to look at the camera in the eye. That's what I need to do. Marlene says, thank you for this wide range of vocabulary. I used to always use fed up with, and I'm sick of, but cheesed off. Yeah, I like cheesed off. I like that expression. It really I really feel cheesed off.
Or I'm a bit cheesed off.
I'm a bit cheesed off about how he spoke to me. Yeah. Tiomsi, that's compelling, and thank you, Tiomsi. And Lilia says, very interesting about the Spanish-English differences. Yeah, Spanish speakers tend to be more monotonal, flatter. So you have to remember that if you're learning. What do you think about Italians, Marlene? Because Italian pitch ranges, they're really animated, Italians, when they're speaking. I don't think it's quite the same situation with Italian speakers.
I don't think it is either, but that's just my impression. The thing is, I haven't studied Italian speakers, but I have read about Spanish speakers. Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to our next group of expressions and words, which is more how we feel, isn't it? How we feel about things that are boring us. When we feel bored, what we might say. Sucks is more common in American English, but British people know what it means. If you say something sucks, It's not good. It's definitely negative. It's a negative thing. Like this computer sucks, this song sucks, or life sucks. If you're
Life
fed up,
sucks. It's like,
you're
oh,
cheesed up.
these are like expressions that you do when you know, put your your hand, or you do that big sigh, you know, that life sucks.
Shoot me
That's how you
now.
do it. Shoot me now.
Oh,
Yeah,
I've just
I like
I
that
put
one.
those
I
in.
use that one a lot.
I put those in twice. Sorry about that. Watching
And
paint
then
dry. Listen, we've had those before. Bored out of my mind.
I'm
Completely
bored out of
bored.
my mind. You're doing that sort of thing by putting things in over and over again just to make people bored, aren't you?
That's right. I'm trying to bore you. Yeah.
By repeating yourself.
Repetition. Well, no, actually, repeating myself hopefully will get these expressions into the
That's
heads of our lovely listeners.
It was all a ploy, wasn't it? It was deliberate.
It was deliberate.
Deliberate.
When was the last time you were bored, Lynn?
Oh, well, this is a question for everybody. So please tell us. Just think now. When was the last time you were bored? Maybe you can write it in the chat.
Write it in the chat. Yeah. Tell us when you were last bored, and we will tell you when we have thought of it.
Well, I just thought before I came on the class, because I did think last week, but of course I have been bored several times since then. So, so I was bored.
Nothing to do with your students, obviously.
No, I'm never bored with my students, really, not at all. No, I was bored precisely 3 hours ago because I went 2 hours ago, because I went to the gym because I'm trying to get fit, and I went on a machine. I don't really like going to the gym, and I went on that machine when it's like walking. Normally, I like walking outside, but it was very windy and I only had half an hour. So I thought, right, I'm going to go in the gym and I'm going to do that. And I got bored several times doing that because I thought,
don't you listen to music or podcasts while you're...
I should do that next time. Now I know. I used the time to think about how can I do this and not be bored. And then I thought I have to listen to podcasts or music or something. But I was just like, it was a bit boring because it's repetitive. It's very repetitive if you're trying to do it for half an hour, which I did.
Tiomsi was bored when she waited 6 hours during a layover.
Oh, in transit. Oh, yes, that can be boring. Yeah. Yeah,
that's what I was.
They are boring. Those long. When my family lives in New Zealand, and when I have to fly to New Zealand, I try to time it so that I don't have long layovers. But sometimes the layovers are 8 hours, 12 hours. Whoa, no, it's awful. It's awful being in an airport for 12 hours or 8 hours or 6 hours. I try to do it now with 3 hour layovers if I can.
Well, that was what I started speaking about at the beginning. When you're bored, when are you bored? And when I'm stuck in a queue waiting for something, or as you say, waiting at the airport, you're stuck in a situation you can't really do anything. It's dead time. You're just waiting for something to happen, waiting for your flight, or waiting if there's a delay, and that's when I get bored. But that doesn't happen very often.
Marlena.
We're not boring. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Marina. We try not to be.
We're trying hard not to be because.
Anyway, who wants to be boring? Nobody wants to be boring, do they? Well, unless maybe you're a celebrity, maybe a celebrity who's fed up of everybody paying them attention. Maybe they wish sometimes they were boring, but not me. I'm not a celebrity, so I don't want to be boring. Right. Marlena says
was bored in Malta recently. That's why I'm trying to move to another country to chase the adrenaline feeling of embarking on a new journey.
Yeah, we're talking about that shortly because we've got some expert advice about what boredom is. So that confirms that. You'll see in a moment.
Hello, Priscilla. Priscilla's with us. Hi.
Hi.
When I travel for work, I get bored at nights. Yeah.
You mean like when you're on business trips, and I suppose because you're alone and...
Well, I think Priscilla drives. She commutes to work and back from work. So in the car, she probably gets bored. I think you travel by car, don't you, Priscilla, when you go to work? So you could listen to podcasts, listen to music in the car.
Yeah.
One
Yeah,
of my
if you haven't got music or anything on in the car on a long drive, it's a bit boring, isn't it?
one of my students recently said that he speaks to himself in English in the car. He
Mhm.
says what he sees on his way to
Yeah,
work.
that's good. I always tell
Like
my students to
describe
do that.
people, describe buildings,
Uh,
say what you can see. Just speak to yourself in English
read the license
aloud.
plates, read the
Yeah.
numbers on the signs. Yeah,
Get your
no, it's
head
really good that.
into
Uh-huh.
English. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
I was last bored at a social engagement, but I'm not going to say
Oh,
who with because I
oh,
don't want to get into trouble
that is
from
juicy gossip. That is
anybody. But
juicy
yeah,
gossip.
quite
Uh-huh.
recently I had to go to a
Uh-huh.
social engagement, and I was a bit
You're a bit
fed
bored.
up. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Yeah, that can happen, can't it?
it
Uh-huh.
can happen.
Mhm.
Still,
Okay, the next question. Name three things that bore you to death. Can you tell us, listeners, if you can type in the chat files, three things that bore you to death?
yeah,
Have you got
practice the
your three?
vocabulary.
Yeah, have you
I
got your
am.
three, Craig?
Yeah, I did think about. Well, actually, I've got 10.
Oh, 10.
Yeah,
That's too boring. You have to give us the top three. We're not going to listen to 10. We're
they're
not.
all boring though. They're all boring.
Go on then.
Should we wait for people to comment first? What three things bore you to death? Write in the chat.
Hmm. In the meantime, Priscilla was clearing up about when she travels for work. She said at hotels when she's out of her house. That's what I thought.
Oh
Because
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember years ago, I used to go on business trips. And it is true that when you go home after work and maybe you have dinner with colleagues or not, but then when you go back to the hotel room and it's not your house,
yeah.
and the only thing you can really do is put the TV on. And, sometimes you just feel a bit bored. I mean, if
Or
you
go
take your
to
kids
the
off
bar.
or go to yeah, but if you're working, you can't really do that.
Actually, I've had some really interesting conversations when I went to, well, occasionally I go to podcasting conferences,
Uh-huh.
and you met some really interesting people in the
Yeah.
bar. Just if you don't drink, just have a Coca-Cola or something and
Uh-huh.
just get chatting to people, especially
Yeah.
if you're traveling abroad and you can practice your English.
Uh-huh.
But
I never liked that though. I mean, I don't know whether it's a difference being a woman and a man, but I mean, I mean, I don't travel on business now, but when I did, I was only in my 20s and early 30s. And usually in the hotels at night, they were all businessmen. There were very few women. And if I went into the bar at night, I don't
yeah,
know. I
you didn't feel
probably,
comfortable.
I didn't feel comfortable. No,
Yeah,
no,
that's a
no.
good point.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. Soccer bores Priscilla to death.
Football.
Football, yeah.
Now, do you know, I don't mind. I like football, but the sport that bores me to death, Priscilla, is
Cricket,
no, cycling. My
cycling.
husband loves watching the cycling.
Hmm.
And I think, what is more boring than that? All you see is all these people cycling and everybody's waiting for the accident. That's the only exciting thing that happens. And that's awful to see when there's an accident because somebody's getting hurt. So, I mean, I just can't understand why people watch televised cycling. I find it really boring. Or Formula One as well. Like the
Yeah.
televised Formula One.
Oh,
I can
I quite like
imagine
Formula One, but
if you
that's
went there, it might be exciting, but
well, it's also interesting if you follow Formula One and you get to know the different racing teams and the different drivers. Then you know, are Ferrari going to beat Red Bull, and who's got the best car, the best engine? So yeah, I'm not sure about that, but what does Tiomsi say? Waiting for the result of an exam. Not only am I bored to death, but I also feel nervous and excited. Yeah, mixed emotions.
mixed emotions, yes. But it is true that maybe I know I've had students who really need an English exam and they put all of their attention, maybe then, some of them haven't been working. So they've been studying so hard for the exam. That's all they've been doing because they need the qualification. And then it's true that the waiting period afterwards is horrible because they don't know if they have to repeat the exam or if they can just chill and leave it all. So they don't know whether they still have to keep working or not. And there are some exams in Spain where you have to, if you don't pass the first part, you can't go to the second part. And then you don't know whether you should still be studying for the second part or whether it's a waste of time. And
Yeah.
that I can imagine that that's really boring.
Yeah, that would be boring. What else have we got here? Hi, Paloma. Paloma's joined us. Good to see you.
Hi, Paloma.
Doing nothing, being inactive physically and mentally. Well, yeah. Although it would be nice to do nothing for a while. I don't think I'd get bored. I'm really looking forward to my holiday.
I think that depends on how much you've done in the run up to that moment. Because I think certainly when I really enjoy my holidays where I don't have to do anything and I haven't got any physical or mental commitments, I just like going with the flow. But it's true that if I'm not on holiday and maybe you haven't got work and everything is done, I know what Marlene means, because I feel like that too. I start getting a bit annoyed or I don't feel good.
Agitated. You hit the nail on the head there, Lynn, says Tiomsi. So what are your 3 things that bore you to death, Lynn?
Me, I said, this is a good one. I hate presenters who present with PowerPoint. I have nothing against PowerPoint. I like PowerPoint. I use it myself.
I know what you're going to say.
But I hate it when they put everything that they're going to say on the PowerPoint.
Death by PowerPoint.
Exactly. Death by PowerPoint. I hate that. That's my top one. My second top
Can
one.
I say something about that before your second one? If anyone's watching this, and I know a couple of people are, and you need to give a PowerPoint presentation, don't put a lot of text on your PowerPoints, because not only is it boring, but people cannot do 2 things at once. They cannot listen to you and read. So just put a picture or 1 or 2 words. It's impossible to listen and read at the same time.
Yeah. And so I hated that. And that's what happens now. When I was at school many years ago, but my daughters said their teachers still did this. I hated it in class where we had to read a novel and every student had to read a paragraph and then the next student another paragraph aloud and then the next student. That was boring. That was so boring. Where you had to listen and read at the same time.
Yeah.
There was no purpose to it. I mean, I have to say that in my classes, I don't have it now, but in my one-to-one classes online, but when I used to do presential teaching, sometimes I did do that with my students, but I told them that it was a pronunciation exercise, but having people read a text it's so other people's speeds is just dreadful to understand the text. It's horrible.
I think teachers used to do it to keep all the class together at the same pace and keep their attention. A bit like dictation. You give dictation, everybody's on the same page, everybody's doing the activity at the same time. It's easier to control a class when they're all doing the same thing.
Yeah, so I hated that.
Priscilla, ironing, probably. Use the gerund.
Ironing.
Ironing.
I didn't understand that. I thought you said like iron tablets that fed you up. No, you mean ironing.
Ironing.
No, I like ironing, Priscilla. I like it.
I wouldn't say fed me up. I'd say ironing makes me fed up.
Fed up.
Yeah, or I get fed up when I'm ironing. I hate ironing. I never iron my clothes, obviously.
You see,
Never.
I like it because I use it to think or to watch television or to listen to music. And listening to music and television and thinking, often I haven't got time for. So that's really nice. Like I quite like that because it makes me have time for things.
Last time I was ironing, I burned my ear. The phone rang. No, the phone rang, and the phone rang. I went,
God.
Another time I fell out the window. I was ironing the curtains. Do you want to hear my? Oh, did you give your third one? I can't remember. Did you say your third one?
My third one, long queues, and somebody else said that.
Yeah.
Somebody said queues. Yeah, long queues. They bore me. I remember we went last year to see Coldplay in Barcelona. We had to queue for 5 hours. Then when we got into the stadium, we had to wait for 3 hours before they came on. That was so boring.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
waited about 8 hours to see the Rolling Stones once. That was boring. But not the concert. So
Not
my
the concert, yeah. Fortunately, the concert was good. If the concert had been bad, I would have said, "Shoot me now," because I was so frustrated.
yeah. Well, queuing is definitely one of mine on my list. Also, I have stupid people, bad TV, politics, my neighbour.
I hope they're not watching.
He won't be watching. Opera,
Opera.
which is a shame because my wife loves opera, but I think it's boring. You know, instruction manuals, when you have to read instruction manuals, that's boring. Ironing, I've got ironing here as well.
Ironing them too.
Heavy traffic and doing taxes.
Oh.
Yeah. Those are my 10.
Wow, that's quite a lot. So, I mean, for somebody who doesn't get bored often, I don't believe you. You had lots.
What would a boring day for you look like? What would you be doing on a boring day? Well, I've just told you I'd be ironing, going to the opera and doing my taxes and reading instruction manuals. That's what I'd be doing, and watching bad TV.
Oh, watching bad TV. Yeah, me for a boring day
with my neighbour.
with your neighbour round for coffee.
What would your boring day look like?
Boring day for me would be if it was bad weather and I didn't want to go outside. Because as soon as I start feeling bored, if I go outside, I don't feel bored at all. So, but if it's bad weather, like really windy or wet or cold, and if there are no good shows on the TV, because I also agree with you, bad television is super boring.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that my house is already clean, then that would be a boring day. Because they're the kind of things that I use to distract myself. If I'm feeling bored, I would go outside if the weather was good, or I would clean my house because there's always something to clean. But occasionally my house is clean and then I've done it the day before. And I think, oh, nothing to do at home.
No ironing.
No, exactly. No ironing. And if there are bad TV shows, the house is clean and there's bad weather, that could be a very boring day for me, I think.
Well, we've got some answers from people watching. Chomsky says, not dressing up and staying inside. I like staying inside. I don't get bored at home. I quite like being at home.
And not dressing up, that's interesting. It is true. When you dress up,
you feel better.
You feel better. That's true. And when you're kind of like, because when I'm ill, I feel quite bored. Do you feel that when you're ill, you know? Like
Yeah, you feel miserable.
You feel miserable, and you haven't got the attention or the strength to do things to take you out of your boredom.
Yeah.
So sometimes I get bored when I'm ill, if I have to stay inside and you can't dress up and you feel horrible. Yeah, that's quite boring.
Marina finds rainy days boring. I like rainy days if I'm inside. I don't like walking around in the rain. I don't like the rain and getting wet. But
Marina, where are you from, Marina? You sound like Martini's Italian. Sounds like Italian. Are you Italian, Marina? Because if you were English, I imagine that. Because I mean, it does rain a lot in England, doesn't it? So it
can get boring.
But for example, where we're living now in Spain, because it doesn't rain often, I don't find raining days boring.
I like them.
I like going out in the rain.
Reminds me of England.
Yeah, but when it rains every day, that is boring. It's true. So where do you live, Marina? Tell us where you live if it rains a lot.
No, Marlene, that's not. I don't get bored when I am cooking. I just don't like cooking. When I'm cooking, it makes me tense. It makes me nervous, especially if I'm cooking for another person, which doesn't happen often. But I just don't like it. It doesn't relax me. I just feel on edge. If you feel on edge, then you're nervous. You're anxious. So that's not boredom, is it? That's you're
No, you're engaged.
anxious,
You're engaged
engaged, but in a
and feeling
negative way.
anxious. Yeah. Marlena says heat wave in Malta is boring. That's also true. When it gets really hot here as well, it can also be a bit boring because you can't go out because it's too hot.
So maybe extreme weather, lots of rain or
Extreme
lots
weather.
of heat is boring.
Okay.
Next one. How do you overcome boredom? How do you not be bored? What techniques, what advice, what tips do you have for us when we get bored? How can you overcome boredom? What do you do to relieve boredom? Let us know.
What about you? I try to think. I like to think of something different. I like to think and daydream, that sort of daydreaming. Like I think, what would I do if I won the lottery, for example? I can spend a long time I can usually occupy myself for quite a long time, like designing the house that I would build or the lifestyle that I would have, the holidays that I would have.
That's
can waste quite a lot of time like that.
That's because you've got a lovely imagination. So your mind wanders and you imagine things. You're very creative like that.
Well, I don't know whether it's creative. I don't think it's creative wanting to win the lottery.
I daydream. I daydream about winning the lottery, and I don't even buy a ticket. So
yeah, and I do daydream. I can just see that Tiomsi's put listening to beat music songs. I can daydream for hours and hours in the lyrics of songs. So I put music on and I listen to the lyrics and I try to imagine what the lyrics, what is the meaning of the lyrics. And I can spend hours on that. And if you pick people who don't have some lyrics are pretty straightforward, so that's quite easy. But if you listen to Norah Jones, do you know Norah Jones?
Yes, of course. Yeah, isn't she married to Elvis Costello?
Oh, is she? I don't know.
Oh no, I'm thinking of someone else. No, she's not. Sorry.
No, Norah Jones is like a jazz thing. And then I used to do this in a class years ago at the British Council. For the end of term, I used to play them this song from Norah Jones, which was "I Waited Till I Saw the Sun."
Didn't know if she would come.
Know if you would come.
If you would come.
Instead of I'm crying tears in the sand, my heart is
like a rubber band.
No, my heart is something like wine. I haven't got all the lyrics, but anyway, my class, I used to get all the students to get the lyrics, and then they had them all, and then they used to go away in groups and actually make a story out of it. They had to tell me a story for which these lyrics fitted perfectly. And that really uses up 2 hours, no problem. You have all of these intrigued stories about, she's left her husband or she's broken up with a friend or it's a love triangle or she just
I've just put it in the chat. It's I don't know why it's called.
I don't know why. Don't know why you didn't come.
Don't know why you didn't come. Yeah. It's a good song, yeah.
It is a good song. And you can spend 2 or 3 hours making up stories that would merit those lyrics.
Listening to a podcast. That's a good way to, yeah, absolutely. And if you want a good podcast to listen to, there's one there. Just take the opportunity to plug my podcast. Trying not to procrastinate. There's an R in there. Procrastinate. Yeah. Yeah, Marlene also listens to podcasts, working and studying English.
But
Very
that,
well
if
done.
you're bored though, that's really good, Marlena. But do you not think that, like, sometimes when I'm bored, I have lots of things that I know that I could do, but sometimes I don't, when I'm bored, I don't really have the energy to do
You don't
them.
feel like it.
No, you don't feel like it, do you? Uh-huh. So that's why I try to go to daydream or going outside or doing the ironing. But like, I know I have that I have my Spanish books in here, in this cupboard here, and I haven't opened them for years, but it's always on my to-do list. Work on your
Yeah,
Spanish.
work on your
I have
Spanish.
to do it. And I quite enjoy it when I start, but
It's just
yeah,
starting,
I
isn't
need a
it?
certain mindset. Mhm.
Graciela says that she finds going to the hairdresser boring.
Oh,
Actually,
yes, I agree, Graciela.
but don't
Yes.
I mean that? Don't they make small talk at hairdressers? They
Oh,
used
no,
to when
that's
I
right.
went before
Oh,
COVID. But they
well,
say, "Oh, you going anywhere nice for your holidays?" And no, they don't talk to you.
well, some do and some don't. I mean, it depends if you've got an interesting hairdresser, because I have had interesting and boring hairdressers.
As your
But
one that
I
boring at the moment.
no, the one I've got at the moment is quite interesting. But I used to have one that he used to do my hair really nicely, but was extremely boring. Won't mention names, but the other thing I find boring is, like, they take so long to dry it, and all of this, like, pampering, and like, and that really bores me. That I agree with Graciela there. I don't like the hairdressers. uh
Pampering is in the chat.
Pampering.
Pampering.
Yeah, because some people like to go and have their nails painted, or their feet and their hands done, and beauty treatments, but I find all of that very boring, I have to say. I don't like that.
Marlene says she needs to keep her brain engaged. Yeah, that's interesting. That's important. Sorry, that's important to keep
Uh-huh.
your brain engaged. I like to do that too.
Alejandra has put a wonderful one: neighborhood meetings. Yeah.
Oh, they're so boring.
No, they're not. They're so
Oh, I
entertaining. But
hate them. They
you
bore
see,
me
yeah,
to death.
but that's because you haven't got to take them seriously. I go to the neighborhood meetings just for a bit of entertainment, to see my neighbors getting all frustrated and shouting at each other and things. But if you take them seriously, then it's true that they are so boring.
And they're so long. They can last like 3 hours, 3.5 hours.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you have to take them. Maybe you can put this in the chat file. You have to take them with a pinch of salt. A pinch of salt. A pinch is like a little tiny bit. And salt is like when you cook
Puñazo.
and you put a little bit of salt in. And when you take something with a pinch of salt, it means you shouldn't take them too seriously.
Too
So
literally.
too literally. So when I go to neighborhood meetings, I never take them seriously, and I just quite enjoy going there, and I watch it all, and then I come home and I have great stories to tell my family, and we all laugh.
Nadia says, hello from Argentina. Hi, Nadia. I like your explanation, Spanish and English. I need happy moments and keep motivated to learn English. For example, I like psychology. That's the topic, psychology. The psychologist is the person who practices psychology. And reading about different topics about that. Yeah, I like psychology as well. There are certain topics that really grab my interest and stop me from getting bored. Things like body language when you're out and you're looking at how people are reacting and interacting with each other. I love watching. I love people watching. So I don't get bored when I'm out because there are always people to watch. And that always fascinates me.
When I'm thinking as well, once I had because we talked earlier about the layovers, the long transit waits,
Yeah.
and they are very boring, especially when you're alone, right? So when I do them alone, I'm bored. But I remember once I had a 10-hour wait in an airport with a friend, and we played this game just to keep ourselves like sort of occupied. And we went to the arrivals when the planes came in, and we could see like there was a plane arriving from Italy, yeah, and so we would pretend that we were greeting people in Italian. And then the next one came in and it was from Germany, and we go, hello, hello. We had so much fun. Of course,
That's
nobody knew why we were laughing so much, but it was because we were bored. So we were just
yeah,
being
yeah,
silly. But it was really funny. So every time a new plane came in from a different country, we were trying to get some words together and pretend that we were actually
You knew
waiting.
people on the flight, yeah.
But I've never done that alone. You need a friend to do that with.
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
you can't
yeah.
do that alone. No.
If you did it on your own, you might be sent to a psychiatrist, I think.
Maybe.
Moving on, what makes an English lesson boring? I mean, you watching, you're probably English students. There might be some English teachers among you, but you must have been in language lessons. What makes them boring? We'd like to know.
Yeah, tell us. We need the advice because we try. I try not to make my lessons boring. You too, Craig. Yeah, we make an effort, don't we? But
Yeah.
we don't always succeed. So it's good. It's good. Tell us what you think makes an English lesson boring.
And while you're thinking and writing your replies, maybe we could tell you what would bore us about a lesson from the other side of the desk.
Yeah.
Because I've been bored teaching English.
Yeah, me too. Once or twice I have. What made it boring for you in the class?
More exam classes where there might be some heavy reading to do, and a lot of the time the students are reading or writing. Because for exam classes, they used to get the students to write in class because they would never write for homework. So we had no choice but to make them write during lesson time. And that gets boring because you can walk around and help, but most of the time you're just sitting there. And also sometimes when there's no chemistry among the students and you try and do an interactive activity, but there's just no chemistry there at all. The students do not want to speak, and that can be boring.
I think the thing that used to bore me, and I didn't get bored very often in classes, but sometimes it was more the second thing that you said. Sometimes you could get a group where the people in the group were just not very, they kind of came to your class, but they weren't very willing to engage with you as a human being. So, of course, when you're trying to make the class lively and you say, tell me what you think, or tell your partner what you think, when they just used to say the very minimum, like they would say, I agree.
Yeah.
And then they'd look at you and say, we're finished.
Yeah.
And that used to annoy me. That it used to annoy me, and it also used to make it boring for me, because then the only thing you've got to do is give exercises and more exercises and more exercises. And then I think, they could be doing this at home. I don't need to be here giving them exercises if they're not willing to engage.
Yeah. So what are people saying? Grammar, yeah, it can be boring, Marina. It can be boring to teach it, and it can be boring to learn it, but it's necessary. It's the nuts and bolts of a language, really, the grammar. It's difficult to speak effectively without grammar. Hi, Reiko. Reiko, good to have you here from Tenerife. Searching for parking space, is that before the lesson or after the lesson?
Maybe she's still looking. Paloma, are you in the car looking? Yeah.
But yeah, it is boring going round and round the block looking for a parking space. That's really boring. Grammar focus, not interactive enough. Passive lessons, yeah.
I think so too.
And Tiomsi, not engaging, or the teacher talks too long. Yeah.
I'm guilty of that sometimes. I realize I have to stop. Sometimes I talk too long.
When I was studying to be a teacher, the instructor said, try to reduce the
Yeah.
TTT, the
Yeah, the teacher
TTT,
talking time.
teacher talking time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always take account of it when I plan my lessons, but it is I think again, it's another, what do you call it, occupational hazard. Teachers are very prone to talking a lot because people always want their opinion. What do you think, teacher? Teacher, answer me this. And so we get very accustomed to talking. And sometimes when we forget, then we go on too long, I'm sure.
And also, I don't know if you agree, Lynn, but I think with some students, there's this expectation that when they go to an English lesson, the teacher should entertain them a little.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. What's the opposite of boredom? Unboredom, disboredom, boredom, in boredom. What's the opposite? Let's see what you think.
Awfulness. We're telling you all the wrong ones here. Yeah. What is the opposite of boredom?
Well, maybe engagement, excitement, stimulation, perhaps. Enthusiasm could all be the opposites.
Excitement. Marlena wants to be excited by going to another country. I understand that. Excitement. Timothy says that too.
Vivacious, nice, lively.
Vivacious, nice. Nice word.
Oh, thank you, Tiomsi. She's never got bored. Whoa, phew, thank you. Time flew. And she's sure that your lessons, Lynn, must be engaging as well. They are, because I've known Lynn for a long time, and she's a very engaging teacher.
Okay, interested as well. Paloma's given interested as the opposite of boredom. That's true.
Yeah.
But the noun, if we're giving, be careful, because we've been accepting like verbs or adjectives. Remember, boredom is the noun. So the exact opposite would be interest. Or liveliness or vivaciousness, because we've accepted some, and of course they're adjectives: lively, vivacious, interesting.
So absorbed would be what? Absorption?
No, you could engagement. I think you would say
engagement. Yeah.
Engagement. Okay.
Okay. How are we doing for time?
Question. We've only got 2 minutes, but
okay.
Marina said super activity, but I think that word, I don't think it really exists.
Hyperactivity?
Lovely word. There's a word hyperactivity, but it's quite negative. So I like superactivity because it implies that it's not negative.
Yeah.
So that's a nice word, but it's not very common, superactivity.
And joyful would be the noun for joyfully, yeah.
Yeah.
Time does fly.
When you're enjoying yourself.
But there's one thing I want to say before we go about technology, because I was curious thinking about this topic, that these days, whenever people are bored, they just take out their mobile phone. If you're standing in a queue, if you're stuck at the airport, if you're in a situation where you're kind of trapped in a boring place, the first thing you do, my reaction is to take out my mobile phone, check my emails, check my apps, play a game, do something. So I'm just wondering whether technology is helping or hurting boredom.
Maybe not hurting, but aggravating, you mean, making it worse.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I think it does both, I feel. I think originally, I think it can help, because if you're waiting in a queue, it's very nice to have your phone because you can start reading the newspapers and fill your time. But what I do realize now is that you do get quite addicted to the phone, and you pick it up even when you're not bored, and you fill your time with it. The phone is really attention grabbing.
It's a habit.
And I think it's a habit. And in that sense, sometimes I have noticed I have got bored with my phone. I've been feeling bored because I'm just reading all of this stuff that I don't really want to read. I should be outside and doing something. So I'm trying to reduce my phone use because I think it's a little bit, I think it aggravates boredom, and it stops creativity. It stops that daydreaming, because it fills you before you can fill yourself with ideas. I
Yeah,
think.
and there's that dopamine hit you get when you're using an app and you get a message and someone replies and you get a like, and it's always constantly feeding your feel good factor. So you're constantly on the phone. It's addictive. And Marlene says it might trigger boredom to a certain extent, but yeah, it could make it
Yeah.
worse. Anyway, I hope you haven't been bored. Have you been bored today? I hope not.
I hope time has flew for you.
Flown.
Flown. Yeah. Sorry, made a mistake there. I hope time has flown for you because it's flew, flown, flown.
Flew,
No, it's
flown,
not.
flown.
It's not. It's not. It's fly, flew, flown.
That's what I said.
I thought you said flew, flew, flown.
I think it's time we went to bed
I think it is.
or had a rest or something. Lynn, why don't you tell people how they can get more of you, and why wouldn't you get more of Lynn? Where can they find you?
Well, it's very easy. You just go to the website, putitlikethis.com. You can read a little bit about me, find out about the kind of courses that I offer. And if you're interested, there's a contact page there as well. So you can get in touch. And if I've got space and time, we can have classes.
Okay. And if you want to study for free, go to mansioningles.com, especially if you're a Spanish speaker. There'll be lots of material and courses there to help you. And if you want to multitask or not be bored, then listen to inglespodcast.com and it will send you to sleep.
It does not.
And if you would...
Podcasts do. Some podcasts do.
Yeah, there's one called Sleep With Me, which does send you to sleep. That's the purpose of the podcast, to send you to sleep. Yeah. And it's nice to see some students here from Marlene did a course with me, and Tiomsi as well. So if you are interested in English conversation, improving your speaking, and I promise I'll try my hardest not to bore you, go to the website englishcraig.com. You can book a free consultation for 10 or 15 minutes. I'll tell you all about it, give you a quick level test, and tell you the days and times of courses in May. So there's the website, englishcraig.com.
Great.
And until next time, when we hopefully talk about something a bit less boring in 2 weeks' time.
This is quite lively. I'm sure this was
I think it's the liveliest one we've done, I think, this year.
I think it was more lively than if we'd done what interests you. That might have been boring.
Yeah. Don't be bored. Don't be bored. Be interesting.
Okay.
See you soon.
2 weeks. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.